My name is Bogdanski. I'm a senior research administrator at Colorado State University, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about the Federal Acquisition Regulation. The Federal Acquisition Regulation is a very complex topic, and there's so many things one could say, but I think what I'd like to do is give you a little bit of history and give you probably the most important thing as it relates to the Federal Acquisition Regulation. Back in 1980, there were actually two Federal Acquisition Regulations. One was called the ASPR, the other was called the Civilian Regulations, and the government got the idea to put the two of them together to make one large regulation. And actually it worked out very well because the FAR is a very functional product, and it's easy to use if you have some experience using it. Now, one of the other things I'd like to say about the Federal Acquisition Regulation is the research community is a very small part of the federal budget, and yet the research community has lots of its own clauses and prescriptions in the Federal Acquisition Regulation, which to me is a little bit unusual in that although we are such a small part of the federal budget process, we have been given a lot of latitude in the Federal Acquisition Regulation, and we ought to take advantage of that latitude. Now, the most important thing about the Federal Acquisition Regulation is the federal government tells you the clauses that they're going to use, and they are called the clauses. But they also tell you why they're using those clauses, and they're called prescriptions. And in the beginning of each of the clauses it says, at paragraph, and they'll give you a paragraph number, there is an explanation of why we're using this clause. So the best thing that you could possibly do is to read the clause, go back and read the prescription and compare them and find out if they're appropriate for the situation which you have. And if lots of the prescriptions say for universities or institutions of higher education, use this particular clause or use this particular alternate, and then you go back and you look at the clause and you have a clause written specifically for us. So the best thing, as I said, the best thing about this is that the government not only tells you what the clauses are going to be, they're going to tell you your thought processes, and they help a lot with the negotiation because you know where the government is coming from. So keep working with those prescriptions, keep working with those clauses, and eventually you'll get to be very comfortable with the Federal Acquisition Regulation.